Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really sorry for the wait just there. Thank you all for joining our webinar today with HPE on SimpliVity HCI Simplified. I'm Danielle Chapman. I work in the marketing team here at Bytes, and today I'm joined by Jamie Jamal Rashid, who is the Hyperconverged Technical Architect at HPE, Alex Wilson, who is Cloud and Hyperconverged Solutions Architect at HPE also, and Pete Wickham, who is our HPE Specialist here at Bytes. So I'm just going to pass over to my colleague Pete, who's just going to give a bit of an intro and look over the agenda.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm Peter Wickham, the HPE Business Development person here at Bytes, and I'm really pleased you all managed to tear yourselves away from the joys of homeschooling to be with us today for this SimpliVity and Hyperconverged webinar. Bytes have worked closely with HPE for several years. I joined about a year and a half ago to add some dedicated focus to the relationship. I support your Bytes account managers with any HPE opportunities that they may uncover with you. Today's agenda will start with an overview of hyperconvergence, moving on to HPE's hyperconverged strategy. We'll then cover SimpliVity and how it leverages the power of AI, which I suspect is going to be fairly strongly focused on HPE Insight. Don't think I'm giving too much away there. We'll follow that with a demo of SimpliVity, and we'll then close with a brief Q&A session. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Alex and Jamie from HPE, who will be presenting to you today.
Sorry, joys of having two places to mute things. So hi everybody, sorry for the silence there. So I'm Alex Wilson, I'm a cloud and hyperconverged solutions architect as mentioned. Been at HPE for over 10 years now, working on software defined technology, how that evolved into hyperconverged and now connecting to cloud. I'll hand over later on to Jamie to talk in a little bit more detail about the SimpliVity platform itself. So you may or may not have come across hyperconverged technology, but really hyperconverged in general has been about making life simpler, making things easier. So really it delivered that kind of experience that everybody saw when they used their first smartphone perhaps. So moving away from having lots of different devices, lots of different ways of using them, different look and feel, to one single platform that was very simple, very easy to pick up and use. So really in terms of what hyperconverged as an experience has delivered, has been around that very simple to actually get everything set up and running. So it's using that software defined technology to abstract away from complex hardware. It's giving you a pool of resource that you can easily deploy and easily grow. It's moved away from having lots of different separate points of management to actually build a working solution, as well as introduce some automation. So you don't have to manually switch backwards and forwards between different things. Maybe you kick off one operation and it controls multiple different things as we go. The other thing would be around how we can scale that environment. So again, hyperconverged typically gives you these kind of almost Lego-like building blocks. So very easy to plug in what you need and then grow that later on as you go as well. So that was really a very useful technology, a very great way to simplify things. But what we've typically seen is that that from a lot of the other technologies out there that helped get you up and running, it helped simplify things day one. What it didn't really do was help you quite so much what we would call day two. So keeping things running as best they can. So, back to that kind of phone experience. So everything works really well and everything's nice and quick. And the battery lasts a long time when you first get it. But if that experience degrades over time, things aren't going so quickly, things aren't working as well, then you're not really getting the best out of that infrastructure. So back to IT, that could be challenges like applications suffering from disruptions, interruptions, performance issues, etc., because things are set up in a very reactive way. So you've got to wait for there to be a problem before you can do something about it. Or perhaps the environment needs a lot of tuning. So perhaps the environment set everything up to go really quickly. So maybe like a drag racing car, it was set up to go as quick as possible to deliver some really stunning performance figures that look good in marketing information. But actually, you know, the real world, when we can all actually get back out there and travel again, is not a straight line. You know, there are corners, there are different types of weather, there are things to deal with. So what you don't want to do is have to make significant changes just to deal with an individual workload or to get the best out of the environment for what you're actually doing at that particular time. The other area we've seen some challenges with other hyperconverged architectures have been around if you actually want to scale that environment. So how do you do that without having to overcommit either compute or storage resources? So taking a look at that, HPE's strategy has been, we need to do something a little bit different with our hyperconverged technology, or HCI hyperconverged infrastructure. So how do we do that? And really, as Pete mentioned, one of the key ways we do that is to actually bring artificial intelligence to the platform. So take away a lot of that sort of manual work and have the platform doing the best it can by itself. So again, that kind of move to, you know, the day after everything was set up and running perfectly, how do we keep it that way? So Hyperconverged took us on the journey from that hardware confined sort of architecture where you've got multiple different platforms doing just one thing. They don't really talk to each other, so it's quite a complex environment to both set up and get running, but also to look after on a day-to-day basis. And it means it's very manual to get the best out of it. It's a very reactive approach, so you've got to wait for something to not be as good as it should be before you do something about it. But also, that architecture was, you know, different pools of resource doing different things, and quite often you weren't getting the best out of all of those. So a move to using these software-defined technologies meant that things could be more automated, so we could set things up and get them running that little bit easier. Things could be in a more of an on-demand approach, so you could ask for something and it would be delivered, but you still needed to actually go and ask for it. Still didn't really do anything around, you know, having to wait for there being an issue before you can do something about it. But it did bring more efficiency because you've not got these separate silos of resource there. Whereas by introducing artificial intelligence, that allows us to have a system that really does take care of itself. So something that is autonomous, it just gets on with things, but it also learns and deals with things as they change. So it allows a system to be self-healing. So if and when there are issues, to actually deal with those. You can start predicting what's going to happen and either suggest or even start taking actions based on that. And also make sure that it's always running in the best possible state that can be. And really, our platform to do that, as Pete mentioned, is our InfoSight engine. So we would describe that as providing a global intelligence. So this is not just, you know, a single platform, single device. This is across basically everything that we do. So it's collecting information from many different areas, aggregating it all together and learning about that. So how can it take care of itself? How can it make sure that we're dealing with issues, dealing with failures, dealing with faults as automatically as possible? but also just keeping things running as best they can. So getting the best performance, the best capacity utilization, and so on out of everything within there. As I said, InfoSight is our technology that we use to do that. So where has InfoSight come from? So depending on how closely you've been working with some of the technologies that we have, this may be a new technology to you, or it may be something you've come across previously. So, so as a little bit of a history lesson, InfoSight was actually developed by Nimble Storage, a company that HPE acquired and has integrated that technology into the portfolio. But effectively, that technology has been running since 2011. And one of those key fundamental requirements of an artificial intelligence system is it needs to have data. It needs to have examples to work on. You've probably all seen some examples of AI looking at images, and if it's not been trained, if it's not seen different things, it can't recognize what that actually looks like. So you provided a picture of a car, it looks at the front grille and it thinks it's a barbecue or something like that. The key to artificial intelligence being able to make meaningful decisions is to have a lot of examples, a lot of data points to work on. So that InfoSight technology has been gathering all of these different data points across these number of years. So initially starting from a Nimble background, it introduced more of a predictive support capability. So taking away from that traditional approach of support was a reactive thing. When something broke, you spoke to a person, and that person, did they have you turned it off and on again, took the basics, and then kind of moved from there. Whereas with Nimble, InfoSight allowed them to automate all of the standard procedures within support, all of the simple break-fix operations, and take care of most support issues without needing to have a person involved to do that. So significantly improving on the support experience. Over time, that platform grew to what was typically connected to that environment were compute platforms running virtual machines. So there was a lot more data about what's the environment above actually doing, what are those virtual machines actually doing. And then taking things from just understanding that environment to actually being able to make recommendations. So based on what's happening here, but also what's been happening across the entire environment and what we see everywhere else in other environments that are doing similar things to you, if you did this, you would get the best out of that. And so we've seen a huge benefit in that in terms of number of hours saved dealing with things because it just took care of itself. Now, these numbers are a little bit old. They're from 2019, and more devices have been sending more and more data back. So this is an exponential curve in terms of data points. But you see here, even back from 2019, we're talking trillions of data points, and that's more zeros than I want to think about right now. So you may be seeing that AI is quite an industry buzz term, and other platforms are talking about this, but they're very early. They're still learning, and they're still learning even what good looks like. Whereas here, we spent a long time learning what good looks like. We're going to continue learning, but we've got a great place to work from. And we've been bringing all of the products across our portfolio into this. So we're understanding what an entire environment looks like, what the life of an application and a workload actually looks like, rather than just a kind of individual siloed operation. And so there's a lot of work that goes on. Some of that is things that you as a customer would actually see. So just making sure that we give you as much information as you need, not too much, but just the right amount of information to show you exactly what's going on, the best way to deal with things. Dashboards if you want to see that everything is green and healthy, as well as what trending that's looking like. But there's also a lot going on behind the scenes, or kind of below the surface. So technologies like the ability to blacklist things. So if we've seen that this combination of this version of the hypervisor, this particular version of the hardware, plus something else, all of those together potentially cause an issue, we can ensure that you can't get yourself into that situation in the first place. We'll just say, no, we don't recommend applying that particular update for your particular configuration. See, there's a lot of learning. So there's learning about the platform, but there's learning across all of the platforms everywhere that's aggregated together. We mentioned that case automation. So that was probably one of the earliest capabilities within the platform to just make sure support is as automated as possible. But all of this is happening using cloud-based analytics. So rather than something sat on the particular platform that it's looking after, that's only looking at that and is consuming maybe a lot of processing for that device to actually deal with things, we're doing this in a much larger forms. We're taking purely telemetric data off the system, and we're then looking at that compared across many thousands, millions, trillions of data points across the world. And then there's that, how can we suggest things, how can we provide recommendations to say you would get the best out of the system if you did this, or you would avoid an issue if you do this, or based on the way you're putting workloads onto this platform, you might run out of compute, or you might run out of storage within this time. But if you were to add this much resource or add another node, whatever it might be, then that will keep you running for another 6 months, 12 months, or it will get your performance up to an even greater level. Okay, so there's what you can see, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes as well. And as an example, one of the first customers to use this with SimpliVity saw some huge benefits around the information that was available, and just saving time in terms of not having to look at things because it's already being taken care of, it's being automated. So some significant benefits there. Really just to finish off from my side, so in terms of our Hyperconverged portfolio, we have two different ways of delivering this capability, but both sit within InfoSight. So both have that level of artificial intelligence and that automation. So the technology we'll be talking about more today, SimpliVity, that's giving us our true hyperconverged architecture. So the simplest way to deliver things, the smallest possible footprint because it's a single device. We can start with just one of these for maybe sort of remote office, DR, things like that, or two of these devices together can give you highly available capabilities to look after critical workloads. The other platform that we've talked about previously in other sessions is our Nimble Storage DHCI, or disaggregated HCI. Now, I promise you that was not a term that our marketing teams came up with. That was an industry standard recognized term where you're actually splitting out the compute and the storage somewhat. So you see we've got a Nimble storage array and the compute, but what we're delivering is a hyperconverged experience. Still the same level of simplification around deployment and management, but you get the capability to reuse existing compute, as well as the ability to grow compute or storage in very different ways. So if you've got an environment that has a very different balance of compute and storage, we have a different way of of delivering that experience. So we have platforms that can cope with every virtualized environment within this family. Okay, so that was everything that I wanted to cover. What I'll do now is hand over to my colleague Jamie, let him introduce himself in a little bit more detail, and then go into the SimpliVity technology in a bit more detail as well. Jamie?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alex, for that really, really great introduction. So yeah, just let me know if you can see my screen. You should be able to see it now. So I just wanted to give you a quick introduction of myself. So my name is Jamie Rashid. I'm part of the Hyperconvergence channel team. I've been with HPE.
Sorry, Jamie. Your presentation is on the other screen, I think.
Oh, my apologies.
You may want to just put it on reading view. No problem at all. Thank you.
Yes, so sorry about that. Yeah, so I've been with HP for approximately about 10 months right now, and it's been really a great pleasurable experience. So I'm dedicated working with Bytes in the channel, providing them with enablement support on anything and everything HP and HCI. So bear in mind throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. So without further ado, let's crack on. So here we're talking about HPE SimpliVity. Now, HPE SimpliVity is HPE's primary HCI offering. And just to give you a little bit of background about the product itself, within HPE, we really have three key pillars that we lean across. The first one is people. So we recruited approximately around 12 individuals dedicated toward HCI and SimpliVity with the aim of capturing and growing market share. In addition to that, we've made incredible investments into technology since acquisition by releasing a variety of different nodes, integrating that more into the actual storage portfolio, and being able to actually leverage some of the key benefits that you get from a really strong portfolio within HP. And finally, it all comes down to economics. So we've made key acquisitions in the market. I'm not too sure if you're following, with acquisitions such as Cray for our supercompute portfolio. And these three key pillars really strengthen and give HP SimpliVity a really, really strong message to go to market, and that is hyperconvergence reimagined for a hybrid world. So I want you to keep in mind all of the key aspects that Alex spoke about in the very beginning of his presentation, how hyperconvergence simplifies infrastructure, how it allows you to be more reactive. But with SimpliVity, we are taking that one step further. So what exactly do you get from SimpliVity? There are a couple of really great use cases and great features, but some of the key ones that I really want to point out to start off with is really the fact that SimpliVity is a highly available and highly scalable platform. So you can start off with simply just 2 nodes in your cluster, and you can scale that to provide you with really, really large enterprise grade protection for those business critical workloads. Now, SimpliVity in itself has a really great level of data efficiency and mobility in that we do what was called inline deduplication and compression globally. Now, this is a little bit different to how other vendors in the market do it. Some vendors will often offload these workloads, and this will often tend to consume vCPU resources, and some other vendors will actually only able to provide you with deduplication to the disk group and not at a global level. Now, when we're talking about deduplication and compression, SimpliVity has 2 methods to achieve this. The first method is hardware accelerated. So this is what happens. We offload those really heavy infrastructure operations to a dedicated PCI card. And by doing so, we achieve all of this with 0 performance impact to production virtual machines. Now, SimpliVity in itself is a really highly resilient and disaster-based platform. We combine a mixture of RAIN and RAID architecture, which allows you to lose up to 12 drives and 1 host in a 4-node SimpliVity cluster, but still maintain 100% data integrity. Now, some of the other vendors in the market will tend to lose data integrity if they lose a capacity drive, but SimpliVity carries on a really strong message of resilience for those critical business applications where you need to failover, where you need a platform that provides you with a high level of disaster resiliency. Now, as Alex introduced in the presentation, we have now brought InfoSight into SimpliVity. So you're now having those AI-driven benefits of autonomy, self-healing, predictiveness, and self-automation. And SimpliVity as a platform has a really diverse range of applications. With HP, we say we are from the edge to the core to the cloud, and we have multiple different use cases and multiple different customers supporting all of those different use cases that allows you to feel the benefits that you get from HP SimpliVity. So moving on to what exactly do you get from HP SimpliVity? Now, within SimpliVity as a portfolio, you get a couple of really great features, but the core technology behind SimpliVity is what we call the SimpliVity Data Virtualization Platform. So what that is essentially a globally aware file system and object store that allows you to really share resource pools across multiple different sites. And the first key pillar of that globally aware resource pool is something called global VM-centric management and mobility. Now, what exactly does that mean? So within SimpliVity, we integrate directly into vCenter. So it's all policy-based VM-centric management. What this means for your IT administrators is a low level of curve because they already know how to use such an intuitive platform. Everything that we do is right-click operations. So if you want to take a backup of a virtual machine, it's a right-click operation. If you want to move a virtual machine from one cluster to another, it's a right-click operation. And by integrating seamlessly into vCenter, you get a single view of all your data centers and your robos. Now, as I mentioned before, SimpliVity is a highly resilient platform, but what we do is we bake in operational backup and disaster recovery directly into the platform. So there are a couple of key features that they're able to provide you. The first one is full logically independent backups with zero overhead. One of the things that SimpliVity offers is what we call part of our hyper guarantee, is that we guarantee you're able to take a 60-second restore of a 1 terabyte virtual machine. And actually a lot more quick than that, but I will be able to showcase you that. Now, from a business capability, what that actually gives you is really granular RTOs and RPOs from hours to seconds in a simple, affordable, offsite disaster recovery platform. Now, onto the final pillar is the guaranteed data efficiency. So as I mentioned previously, SimpliVity offers always-on deduplication and compression at a global level. And because we offload it to the OmniStack accelerator card in our hardware accelerator platforms, you get no performance overhead. Now, with SimpliVity, you really are able to actually leverage and scale really flexibly. As I said, you can start off with just 2 nodes, but you also have the capability to leverage and utilize what we call compute nodes for workloads and applications that are quite compute intensive. So let's go on to some of the key pillars that we've really invested within SimpliVity to get to understand what are the key benefits. So within SimpliVity, you really do get an all-in-one system. So we are collapsing the entire stack, but we're not just doing that, we're building in that resiliency, that backup and disaster recovery. In addition, you are actually managing everything through vCenter. So you have that centrally managed resource pool where you're able to manage your entire estate and also bake in that data protection. Now, within the platform, you have what we call zero downtime and refresh cycles. So you have the capability to simply add in and remove systems in a non-disruptive manner. So that allows you to take out systems and remove systems in a way that meets those business critical needs. Now, within SimpliVity, you get always automated tuning, performance, and efficiency, which is something that you're going to be able to see within the demo, all of which backed and supported by our AI platform, global intelligence, and predictive analytics with support automation baked in. So now let's talk about some of the key wins with SimpliVity. So I don't know if we have any F1 fans on the call at the moment, but one of the ones that I want to talk to you about is Aston Martin Red Bull Racing. So Aston Martin Red Bull Racing actually utilize SimpliVity for a number of different reasons. So currently 80% of their backend systems are running on SimpliVity, and they're also running SimpliVity to allow them to have a 50% reduction in the time that it takes to process critical race data workloads. So they not only have SimpliVity at their data center in Milton Keynes, but they also utilize SimpliVity for their trackside, where trackside you can have very hostile environments with lots of heat, lots of dirt, lots of debris, and they want to be able to simply pack up and move these systems really quickly. And SimpliVity gave them the capability to do that by reducing post-processing trackside from 9 minutes to 2 minutes, which in F1 could mean the difference between podium and a different position altogether. So another one I want to talk to you about is Francis drilling fluids. So as I mentioned before, because SimpliVity does inline deduplication and compression, you're actually able to save on the amount of storage that you need. So they had actually planned for a 60 terabyte solution, but because of SimpliVity's inline deduplication compression that we're able to offer them, they actually only had to purchase about 30 terabytes of SimpliVity, which was actually the fraction of the capability that they actually needed. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the portfolio. Now, we've made a couple of really great investments and released a number of different products in our portfolio to cater to a wide variety of needs. So I'm going to start off briefly by giving you a few examples. The first one I want to talk to you is the 380 platform. Now, the 380 platform is very high performance, great for your data center consolidation, and comes in a hardware accelerated. So by that, I mean we offload the dedupe and compression workloads to the dedicated PCI card. But we also have another platform in the capability with the AMD-based single socket 325, great for those Robo, Edge, and VDI SMB deployments. But what about if you want to leverage some of the benefits of VDI on SimpliVity? We have the 380G, where you have the capability to add in GPUs for those additional GPU-intensive workloads. So the purpose of this slide is really to show you that we've made not only great developments into the portfolio, but that SimpliVity is a diversified platform with a product that can cater to various different needs. Now, as part of the SimpliVity 4.1 release, we integrated SimpliVity, as I said, within the HPE portfolio, and we decided to leverage some of the benefits of HPE StoreOnce. So HPE StoreOnce is a disk-based backup appliance that you can actually use to target for SimpliVity backups. And now the actual StoreOnce portfolio is quite wide. So you can start off with 500 TB to up to 1.7 petabytes. Now, why StoreOnce? So StoreOnce is a great platform because it features and has very similar technology to SimpliVity in the fact that you're able to do deduplication and compression, encryption, we're able to do remote replication, and direct application management, all of which on a platform that is RAID protected. Now, when we integrated StoreOnce into SimpliVity, we wanted to make sure we carry on that message of simplicity. So in the demo later on, I'm actually going to show you how simple it is to send a backup from SimpliVity to StoreOnce with no third-party UI, all managed through vCenter, but allowing you to keep those backups for a longer-term retention period. So now let's talk about how SimpliVity can provide you with end-to-end protection. So by leveraging the benefits of the portfolio, let's start off by talking about the SimpliVity 380. So with the SimpliVity 380, you really get a high performance platform where you're able to keep your backups for a shorter period of time for those really active data. So anywhere from minutes to hours, and being able to recover really, really quickly. Now, by leveraging some of the benefits that you get with the other platforms in the portfolio, you really are able to utilize some of the other benefits that we have with the SimpliVity 380 backup and archive node with up to 25 terabytes of usable storage. Really great for those high capacity, low IOP workloads for medium-term backup retention and really short RTO. So anywhere from 1 hour to a couple of days to a couple of days to a couple of weeks, really. But what if you wanted to leverage the benefits of StoreOnce to keep your data and your backups for a couple of months? So to do that, we leverage some of the benefits that you get with StoreOnce. So you're able to utilize StoreOnce to keep your backups for a longer term retention, to utilize the benefits that you get with deduplication and compression, and then finally being able to integrate all of that within our great message that we have with CloudBank. So now the next thing I'm going to cover is going on to a demo of SimpliVity. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat and we will be addressing them as we speak. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and enable it so you can see the demo. So as I mentioned, we integrate directly into vCenter. So by leveraging some of the benefits that we have with HPE SimpliVity, you're able to utilize all the functionality by clicking on the HPE SimpliVity plugin. Now, at the front page of this plugin, you get a couple of very useful statistics, such as the failed backup status. So of course, we would want that to always appear as 0. And then in addition to this, on this environment, you have the capability to look at the various different clusters in your federation. So for this particular environment, we have 2 clusters. We have our headquarters in Houston, and we have a remote cluster, which is based in Vancouver. So on the SimpliVity plugin, you're able to look at some really useful statistics, such as the actual used capacity for that particular cluster, how much free space you have available, and also the deduplication and compression ratios that we're achieving on that particular cluster. Now, one thing I want you to bear in mind as we go through this demo are the 3 key pillars of the data virtualization platform. So that global VM-centric management of mobility and the ability to do everything as right-click actions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a backup policy. So backup policies allow you to create complex methods to manage your various different backups. So for this particular one, I'm just going to call this one test. So I can have multiple different rules in my backup policy to stipulate the frequency, the expiration time, the actual destination in which I want my backups to be sent to, and whether they can be application consistent or not. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to keep that as that, but I can modify these various different backup rules and edit them. So I can say I can send it every 2 hours if I so choose, and I can save that particular rule. So now that I've actually created my backup policy, the next thing I want to go and do is create a data store. So by creating a data store, I can apply a data store to a specific cluster in my environment, and then from that, create and attribute a backup policy to that. So any virtual machines that are actually inside that particular cluster that are linked to this data store will inherit the backup policy that I then choose. So I'm going to select my headquarters in Houston. I'm going to call this one test. And then I'm going to select the backup policy that I created. So I have the capability to do that here, which is test, and also create a size for my data store. So for this particular case, I'm just going to do 100 terabytes. Now, I want you to pay attention to how simple and quick and easy it is to do that. So you can see simple right-click actions, policy-based automation to leverage some of the benefits that you get within SimpliVity. So now we're going to go on to the actual clusters and themselves, and we're going to take a look at some of the virtual machines in our headquarter cluster here. So I'm going to pick this specific virtual machine. So this is a Windows virtual machine. You can see it's about half a terabyte in size. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a clone of this virtual machine. So by going to all SimpliVity actions, I can click on clone virtual machine, and it pops up to a secondary window which allows me to rename my virtual machine clone to a name that suits me. And we can see that there will already be a backup policy attributed to this clone based on the data store that has already been previously added against that specific cluster. And one thing I want you to sort of pay attention to is how quickly SimpliVity is able to perform these rapid clones. So again, I can select whether it's crash consistent or application consistent. So I'm going to select crash consistent. And then if you pay attention to the very bottom of the screen here, we can see that in a number of seconds, the actual clone of the virtual machine is already been registered and mounted itself here so it's capable. So now that I've created a clone of my virtual machine, the next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to take a backup of this clone, and I want to send that to my remote cluster in Vancouver. So again, simple right-click actions. So by right-clicking on it, all SimpliVity actions, I can then take a backup of that virtual machine and send a copy of that backup to Vancouver. So I can then select my cluster. So this is going to be the remote cluster. And as I mentioned previously, sending backups to StoreOnce is as simple as simply selecting an external store. So if, let's say, for example, I wanted to send a backup to a StoreOnce within this cluster, I select external store, and we can see here that I have an HPE StoreOnce catalyst available to allow me to send my backups to StoreOnce. So again, it's that simple message and that simple integration to allow you to send your backups for longer term retention. So I'm going to send a copy of my backup to my remote cluster in Vancouver. I can select an expiry date if I so choose to. And then again, I can select whether it's crash consistent or application consistent. So pay attention to how quickly and easy it is to actually send a copy of that backup. And within a number of seconds, we can see that the backup has been taken and sent to our remote cluster in Vancouver. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate a disaster. So I'm going to simulate a ransomware or corruption on this original virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that. And this comes into the fully logical, independent backups that we take within SimpliVity that I want you to bear in mind. So I'm actually going to be deleting a copy of that backup from disk. And then now I'm going to navigate to my remote cluster in Vancouver. And I'm going to try and actually restore a copy of the backup that I sent previously. So again, right-click actions, SimpliVity, search backups, and then a secondary window will pop up. And we can see here that this is the backup that I originally had. It was in a deleted state. But a key part that I want you to pay attention to is the actual size that was transferred. So as I said, because SimpliVity does inline deduplication and compression, we are only sending the relevant data blocks from one side to another. So this is really, really great for those robo and SMB environments where you have very thin pipes. Now, a use case study that I probably want to give you is an example of a customer that had previously had to, on oil rigs, had their backups transported by helicopters to their data center on land. But ever since implementing SimpliVity, they were able to leverage the SAT links to send those backups because of that deduplication compression, and because we actually only transferred about 5.2 MB across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a copy of that virtual machine, and then at this particular level with SimpliVity, you can only do, particularly in this case, you can do file level restores as well as actually restoring the virtual machine itself. So I'm going to restore a copy of this virtual machine to my remote cluster. So again, I select the name of the virtual machine, and then I select a data store. So for this particular case, I'm going to pick the remote data store, the bronze policy, press OK. And then we can see that in the background here, the virtual machine is actually being recovered and registered and is available for me right here. So I can actually power on that virtual machine to show you that it's working, it's live. And that is the capabilities that you get within SimpliVity. So it's really being able to leverage the key pillars of the global virtualization platform to send copies of your backups, right-click actions, leveraging the benefits of the deduplication and compression, and also full data locality, so that when we move virtual machines around from one cluster to another, we're not having to hop over the wire and leverage and utilize computational resources to find out where that data is in relevance to the location of the virtual machine. So thank you everybody for taking part in the demo. So if you have any questions, I guess I'm now going to pass over back, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We've had a question here. Is there an upgrade path to SimpliVity for existing HP hardware owners?
So I guess there are a few different things that we can do. So we have the ability to make use of existing compute resources. We have this capability we call compute nodes. So if you've got some existing compute and you want to bring that in with SimpliVity nodes, then we have the capability to do that. We also have some capabilities within our GreenLake offering, so the ability to buy back resources, to actually fund and refund those resources as well. So there are a few different things that we can do. We can also connect storage resources into the SimpliVity node. So a few different options we have there.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Okay, so thank you everyone today for joining. I know everyone's super busy, and we will follow up any other questions that you'd like to submit in the survey, which is just at the end. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that'd be lovely. But other than that, I hope you all have a lovely day, and thank you everyone for speaking today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.